Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, still under the weather, but today I want to talk about insulting somebody online, because if you insult someone online, you could go to jail in this industrialized nation. This isn't an autocratic nation, this is basically a democracy, and this is really happening. Here's what's going on. Now, this is actually coming from Japan, that's right. A bill to introduce prison terms as part of tougher penalties for online insults was passed this past Monday at an upper house plenary session, marking a major step towards tackling cyberbullying in the island nation of Japan. Now, moves to amend the country's penal code gained traction after Hana Kimura, that's a 22-year-old professional wrestler and cast member apparently on a popular Netflix reality show known as Terrace House, was believed to have committed suicide in May of 2020 after receiving essentially a barrage of hateful messages on social media in Japan. Now, parliamentary debate has centered on how to strike a delicate balance between tougher regulations and the freedom of expression as guaranteed by the Japanese Constitution. The main opposition, which is the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, as well as others, have opposed this revision, arguing that it could stifle legitimate criticism of politicians and public officials. The bill was passed after reaching an agreement with the ruling Liberal Democratic Party that basically a supplementary provision stipulating that a review would be conducted within 3 years of its enactment to determine if it was unfairly restricting speech would be added, meaning they're going to pass this law in 3 years, they're going to check it, is it actually working, good, bad, ugly, and possibly remove it after 3 years. Now, in Japan, you've got to understand that insults are actually distinguished from defamation in that the former publicly demeans someone without referring to a specific action, but both, interestingly enough, are punishable under Japanese law. Now, at present, the penalty for insults is detention for less than 30 days or a fine of less than 10,000 yen. The proposed amendments would introduce a prison term of up to 1 year and raise the fine of up to 300,000 yen. Obviously, that's a huge jump. Now, the statute of limitations for insults will also be extended from 1 year to 3 years. The changes will come basically into effect after 20 days after their promulgation. Now, the degree to which an insult will be considered punishable under this legislation is still unclear. I think they're still hammering that out. Now, for example, 2 men in Osaka and Fukui prefectures were fined 9,000 yen each for insults posted about TV personality Kimura before her death, but some expressed concerns the penalties were too light, which obviously led for these legal changes. Also on Monday, a proposal to unify 2 types of imprisonment with and without forced labor into a single punishment was passed basically at a plenary session of the House of Councilors. Now, prison work will no longer be mandatory for inmates, allowing more time to be allocated, according to the Japanese government, for rehabilitative guidance, education, and efforts to reduce recidivism, meaning turning around and coming right back to jail for doing it again. Now, the establishment of the Unified Imprisonment Law will take effect within 3 years of its promulgation. It marks the first time changes have been made to this type of punishment since the penal code was introduced in 1907. This is coming from Kyoto News. And I think this is actually really interesting. I don't necessarily know. I mean, there are benefits to this, right? I mean, we are living, I like to say Twitter is where civility goes to die. And we've seen just the pure anger in this country against one another. People basically, I get called a moron on almost a regular basis. I'll probably get called a moron or something worse or something, similar to that, simply for putting out this video, and should those people have consequences? I'm not a jerk online. I don't insult people. At the same token, everybody has the right to call me a moron. It's a free country, I have the right, basically, to not pay attention to those people that do that. In the same way that if I have free speech, but I don't have free consequences for my speech. So I'm curious to know what you think about this. This is actually really interesting. The Japanese, while obviously have a booming economy, are one of our closest allies ever since the end of World War II, et cetera, have their own unique way of doing things. We've always known that, but I'd be curious to know what you think. Do you think that your country, whether you're in the United States or anywhere else as you're watching or listening to this, do you think your country would enact these kinds of laws? And if you did, how do you think it would go over? Do you think your country needs these kinds of laws? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this. This is an interesting one. The Japanese kind of turning it up to 11 for insults online. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everyone.